if we were a vessel, which we are, or a container, or like a glass of water, and we have all kinds of distractions and, muddy and grit and things of life, they're all shaking around. They're in your water, and you're putting more in, you're pouring more in. So it's just kind of moving. And yet if you put the glass down or you sit down for a little while, all the sediment comes to the bottom, and there's this clear, pristine water consciousness.
Hey, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Men with Purpose. Today, I'm joined by none other than Eli Buren. Eli has spent more than 8 years working with David Deida. He's also a practitioner for more than 20 years in various disciplines like yoga embodiment, awareness, martial arts, somatic studies, outdoor leadership, and much more. Eli, thank you very much for doing this.
Great to be here. Good to meet you, Pav.
Likewise. Normally, I ask my guests to take a deep breath and just do a quick check-in to allow anything that is present right now to the surface. So whenever you're ready, just take a deep breath. How are you checking in?
Present and grateful that all the training that I've had in my life brings me to a position where when someone says take a breath or prepare, like I'm already there. And so I feel grateful to be here, to be alive, to be healthy.
Yeah, gratitude is something that is always at the tip of my tongue, especially when I start these podcasts. So with the risk of maybe sounding like it's almost like a deja vu, I also check in with immense gratitude for being able to witness these conversations, let alone participate in them. So thank you for that. I just want to start for the people who perhaps haven't been aware about your work. I'm curious just a little bit, if we can, on your story. What were you like before you kind of found this embodiment practices and all this really work that we've been doing? What was your life like before and after you stumbled upon this?
Yeah, it's a work in progress, but I certainly have always had the embodiment piece. I've trained more subtleness and more nuance to it, but I was born a wild animal, as we all were, but I was less domesticated and had an opportunity to, and a desire to jump around. And, I was always the kid that was doing the shit that everyone was like, whoa, and,
nice.
And so I had always a strong body, and I didn't have the most developed emotional body or spiritual body until about 99 or so, or 2000. And I met a yoga practitioner who really, it was really the first person I met that was like the real deal, is whatever that means to anyone, but someone that was really a stunning example of what they're speaking about. I'd read about people like that, but I'd never met anyone like that. And so I studied with her for a few years, and I come to find out that she was, partnered, or she had been married to David Deida. And so I was basically learning. I didn't know that at first, but I was learning the kind of the yoga side of that aspect. And so I was training the sensitivity, training the awareness outwards. And that's really where the journey I'm on now began sincerely, was in those, those early classes. And I certainly was always compelled towards relationship, towards people, towards life, towards nature. But I also hadn't really worked the intimacy piece to the degree that I have. And that, stepping into those rooms, I was demanded to. And so that led to then meeting David Deida, going to some retreats, and I had all the yogic training from his partner, and we had a certain bond that was unique. And so that he invited me to come and start teaching the men's sessions in his workshops and his 7-day intensives, where I would be leading, 30, 150 men for every morning for, 2 hours or so. And
Wow.
That was a great training. I did that for years, and beautiful times, powerful times. And in that, I really learned the yoga of intimacy with another, with a feminine being, which was something I was always natural at, but I hadn't really gotten the subtleties of when you say something and your partner responds and says something back, and there's some movement. I was kind of more like a brick. I would just respond, and I wouldn't have much response on my side. And I had to really learn that when you want to create that bond, that conversation that makes her happy, her heart happy too, there's a play, there's a flow there where she says something, does something, or anyone really, and there's some response like, hey, I hear you, and now I'm tossing it back instead of just, which is,
yeah,
I think, where a lot of men start out, is that place of the high side of it's just calm, grounded, no need to make a big show. The low side of it is it's a fear shield of expression and afraid of what people might think, or just numb and to life. And so there's just like this kind of robotic sitting there. And in the early days, I saw a lot of people, and I think a lot of your listeners and men that you've interviewed, often, or in the early days, especially with David Deida work, and I think a lot of men's work, people train to become conscious, and there's a lot of posturing towards what is consciousness, what is presence. And so it's like, if I sit straight, strong, and I breathe, and I'm no emotion, then am I present? And that's natural. It's healthy to train that. And then that's what I like to work with now more, is that spectrum from completely still, sitting in the mountains for weeks on end, doing nothing, to completely wild, ecstatic, and dance and sacred theater.
Wow. Whew. There's so many things I wanna get into. Man, you said so many things that are interesting. Maybe let's start with this. I know you recently completed a retreat, which is you basically going into, as far as I understand it, going into the wilderness by yourself. What was that experience like? If you could share a little bit of that.
Incredibly aligning and centering into what really matters in my life. So that experience, I often describe it like, if we were a vessel, which we are, or a container, or like a glass of water, and we have all kinds of distractions and, muddy and grit and things of life. They're all shaking around. They're in your water, and you're putting more in, you're pouring more in. So it's just kind of moving. And yet, if you put the glass down, or you sit down for a little while, all the sediment comes to the bottom, and there's this clear, pristine water. Consciousness. And so that's what it's like for me, is I really enjoy that. And that's been a big part of my practice for the last 17 years or so. It's 18 years. Wow. Where every year I carve out anywhere from 7 days to 14 days. And it's definitely challenging. It's not for the faint of heart. It's, the first few days are often really challenging when you want to do anything but sit with yourself. And that's the whole point of it, is that you literally remove all distractions, both the beautiful ones and the bullshit ones. And you get a chance to have a conversation with who you become in a moment where there's not an external influence or a moment of challenge and boredom, difficulty. Like who do you become? Because you can't really blame anyone else. So if you get angry and sad or whatever is coming up, it's kind of like that's your basic attitude towards life. And so that's a really useful thing to be able to explore, is who do you become and who are you underneath all the clothing and the fancy whatevers that we have our lives filled with, because those things come and go, and the one that we are and behind it, who you are, it's it's the same man you were 10 years ago. Not the same man, but the same part of you is the same, and it's the same when you're going to be 10 years older. And so I like to explore that.
Maybe I'm too much stuck into my own bullshit and being distracted right now, that I never thought about it that way, that you are left by yourself to explore who you really are, like what is going to come up, what's going to come to the surface in an experience like that. It's it's a shame, at least to me, maybe because of what's been happening over the last 18 to 24 months or so, that people don't really take the time. Everybody seems to be really stuck at home and going through the motions and spending a lot of I certainly spending a lot of my time on computers, that I seldomly get the chance to ask those deeper questions, let alone undisturbed by anything else, and just being there with myself. So I guess that's incredibly important for men to do something like that by themselves.
Well, let's be clear too, just to add to that, is that that's a focused moment. So it's more dedicated towards that process, but any moment in life is the same opportunity. You get into a friction with your partner, and who do you become in that moment? What, you have a moment of discomfort and you're hungry, or you're working out and you're holding something for a long time. Basically the attitude we have towards life, or I like to call it the spirit of engagement, like we bring that into every room, every interaction we go through life. And that's, to me, that's a deeper level of men's work, and maturity as a man or woman is beginning to develop the capacity to grow out of the adolescent attitude towards something's happening to me, I have to react to it, or I want, and I don't care what anyone else does, or, the world's out to get me, and kind of outgrowing that, realizing the maturity of you're in relationship to the world. And it has everything to do with you, with your attitude towards life is always throwing things at us. And sometimes they hurt and sometimes they feel delicious. That's not going to change. That's life. So the more we understand that and stop blaming life, blaming our girlfriend, blaming the pandemic, blaming our finances, it's like, let's look at those things clearly, but really come back to the sense of that's all you have, is how you respond to the situation. And there's a lot of great training that is like gives you the skills to meet the situation, but ultimately to me that's the most interesting thing, is even if you're an amazing musician or martial artist, if you're still crimped inside and like doing it because you don't feel like you're got the attention or the love you wanted as a boy, and you're like doing this thing so that people look at you, it's a different tone than just and that's maturity, and that's a life of work.
Yes sir. Wow. I can't help but think that your presence is incredibly strong, even though we're just speaking with Zoom right now, but it really shows that level of dedication towards this practice really shows in the behavior. And I'd like to just highlight what you said, responding versus reacting. It seems to me a lot of people, whether it's because of the culture and the societal life that we have structured it this way, tend to be a lot more reactive right now, especially when attention spans are like shrinking to the point where you become like a golden fish. So perhaps maybe some practices for men who really want to be able to model some of that behavior that you're bringing, for example, in this conversation right now. What would you tell them?
It's a really good distinction, and we get to train with that. What I would, the first thing I would offer is that reactions usually come from not being in the moment. So if you're in the past and you're kind of like had some trauma or a bad day, whatever, and something happens, and you're not really here, you're going to react as if that thing in the past is still happening to you. And so you're not really seeing what's in front of you. And if you're in the future, similarly, you're not really here. You're reacting to something because of what you think you want in the future, which is great. That's masculine direction and purpose. But I mean, come on, when you really start to feel the life, it's like, good luck with that. I mean, nobody knows where they're going. And, that it's like we do our best to chart something, but healthy masculinity goes, whoa, like, I guess I'm going to move it this way a little bit, instead of this rigidity of like, I'm going to hammer into this no matter what the consequences and how it hurts people. That's just adolescent again, or it's fearful masculinity. And so the present moment is where responsiveness comes from, because you're in relationship to this present moment. And what do we have that is always here? Our physical body. So your physical body can't be in the past, or it can't be in the future. It has to be in this moment. So it's like the anchor is just splayed onto this moment. And so I often train in that, and that's what I practice myself, is the capacity to come back if there's a reactivity. Let's say someone says something and there's this immediate anger, like, why would you do that thing? To kind of come back to the body, and you'll notice that the breath gets tense in those moments. And so the energy goes up into the face, and you're trying to protect something. If you've had enough training where you then begin to bring your attention to your feet, to your breath, as you said, you take a deep breath into your belly, you sense the air on your skin, or the feeling of the shirt on your body. And then all of a sudden, you might still be angry, but there's a sense of, oh, there's another person across from me or something. And then you train in the capacity to feel, which allows you might disagree and feel incredibly like you need to protect something, or even protect yourself with that person. But if you've grown to the level of where you're in this moment, you're aware of your body, the next step is becoming aware of your surroundings and being aware of other bodies, so that you can then see the person in front of you, and you can see that they're tense and angry, and you realize, oh wow, you look into their eyes and you feel like their pain as a child, and you feel like their heart beating, and you realize that and this is all, you can't always do this in a really fast moment. Sometimes it happens so damn fast. But in more, let's say relational moments where you're in it with your girlfriend or with a good friend, where it's sort of building and you have a little bit more space, that is the training, is come to your body, notice what's in front of you, and this is kind of high level, but I'll just say it, is that the third one is being able to realize that there's a space around you that's holding the entire conflict. And if you're locked into the personal sense of I'm right, you're at this little table fighting over something, and you're intensely fighting over this thing. And if you just have a little bit of freedom to like kind of look that way, or then maybe even you stand up and you step back from the table a few paces, and you look around, metaphorically or actually, you realize that there's a whole world out there that's happening. And there is this conflict, but it's happening within a world of life and death and beauty and mystery. And so it kind of like, if you really notice that, it's hard to be really angry in those moments if you feel the immensity of life.
Mm.
And then that is a martial skill to be able to go, whew. So this is the important piece, is that we don't want to just feel the immensity of life and become, I mean, some people want to, and I've done a fair amount of that, but I think to be like a meditator and be out here in this space, kind of non-dual yogic space, where that's healthy, but just as much to train the skills to come in with a sharp word, a sharp blow. And that's the piece that where I think is really important for men to honor and to train in, is their capacity to still stay sharp and ruthless and be able to enter a conflict, not be afraid of it, but also it's like keeping the face soft as you're tussling with someone instead of tensing and you're getting angry and everything. It's like, can you be a serene face as you're sparring with someone? Can your belly stay soft and relaxed as you're, in a moment where you're really feeling upset at your partner? Can you still stay soft and available to the moment? And then you have, I'll say one last thing here, is that you realize that when a sharp, bold action wrongly placed is abusive and is the kind of masculinity that the whole world is saying, whoa, don't do that. Like the whole woke wave is basically trying to, that's what they're talking about, but they don't realize the subtlety of that exact same action placed in a precise moment is fucking beautiful. It's what everyone will bow to. It's what you see on the movies. It's like, it's what is the true masculine.
Yeah. Wow. Whew, dude, and the 2-3 minutes of what she said, so many things we can unpack. That's a entire episode in of itself. Let's maybe talk a little bit, since we're on this topic right now of responding versus reacting. Can we maybe just talk a little bit about embodiment? This word seems to be thrown around, and I think I like to think that I have an idea of what it means, but I'm curious to also hear your take on it, because I see so many men that really would benefit from having an understanding of what that means exactly.
Yeah, really simple. Like the two things that come is the embodiment to me is when I'm running my consciousness through my body. So it's like literally a conscious practice of touching and being in relationship with the world. Another definition of embodiment, I would say, is sensitizing the physical being so that it's sensual with every moment, whether you're fighting or whether you're rolling through a beautiful ocean wave, whether you're making love. It's like your antenna is just sensitized to the pokes and the caresses of life. And then one other thing I'll add in, brings us back to the beginning. What we were talking about is the spirit, is that you're home when you're moving. That's embodiment. So someone that goes to the gym and pumps like mad, big muscular body, I don't consider that embodiment. I consider that building a muscle, because a lot of those guys aren't really home in what they're doing. They're just, and so to me, embodiment is when somebody's home, and whether you still want to build a big muscles, which is cool and fun sometimes, or whether you want to be more fluid, you're aware of what you're doing as you're doing it, and you're present in the push-ups instead of thinking about something else. That's embodiment.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you for putting that definition. I think people hopefully can benefit from that. Speaking of embodiment, we had a men's circle last night, and I had a friend there who's never been to a men's circle. He didn't really know what to expect with these sort of things. At least my experience is that it's difficult to explain. You really have to kind of experience for yourself. And one thing he said, which was really striking for me, is he said, you know what, I have a lot of female friends or girlfriends, so I feel I need to get a little bit more around men and kind of have this masculine energy. Why do you think it's important for men to really come together and spend some time together in a container like that?
So many things I could pull down to answer that.
I just feel like mentally you're just going through the book, like, okay, what should I say?
There's like birds.
Yeah.
Well, so the ones that are kind of the most present is that there's a sense of being where it's not distracted by attraction to another quality of being. So, and of course, we could be more nuanced in that, and some masculine beings would be attracted, but if we're just talking about a straight men's group, then it's, there's something that happens when you can relax the posture or the targeting, which we're physiologically built to do. We're built to target in, lips and breasts and and so when that isn't there, then you can actually have a conversation in a way, and many men could do that with women in the room, so I'm just generalizing, but as as a species, it's healthy. You can play more, and you're experiencing something that other men have direct experience of, because they have a masculine essence. They have genitals that are like yours. They have testosterone running through their system to some degree. So there's a similarity that you can speak to and go, this is my experience. And a man goes, oh yeah, I've experienced that too. Or, when I was growing up, like there's a genuine healing and acceptance in, oh wow, we've done this together, or you've had a similar experience, and I'm sure you've experienced that, where someone starts talking about something and checking in about something they're struggling with, or something they've succeeded at, and like half, 3/4 of the group are all nodding like, oh yeah, me too. And so that brings a camaraderie amongst a group of friends that I think is tribal. I think that there's something tribal in us actually relaxes, because we come from that. That's in our DNA. So there's a feeling of, this is my brothers, and I trust these guys, and I would do anything with these guys. And then you can get into the cool stuff of starting to really sharpen each other with your own sharpness, and and pushing into each other into areas you wouldn't naturally go on your own, because you trust these guys more than you would trust some average person that just wants to sell you something.
Okay. Yeah, listening you talk about this, is just, for a moment, I just go back to those experiences, and again, I try to really be present and really be in the now. But just by you saying this, I remember some of the moments that I've shared with other men that, it's really invaluable to be in a space like that. You mentioned something about sharpness and, being able to help each other out. And I know you have some experience with martial arts, and I personally am fascinated by this, specifically within this realm of men's work. It is my belief that most, if not all, men should partake in some kind of a martial arts practice. What is your take on that? Why is it important? Obviously, again, I'm overgeneralizing here, but I do believe there's a lot of value in men really being able to meet that edge and really feel and see what's beyond that.
Yeah. Well, one thing too, I just want to, one more piece came in for why a man joins a men's group, and it's
please,
just really simple. I think this makes more sense to some men and to women who don't understand, is that you can express things that without offending someone of the opposite gender in a way that just feels natural. So if you had someone in the room that didn't like violence or really loud sounds or really sharp kind of angular things, they would feel like, hey, that hurts. Like, what? That's, why are you being that way? Then the whole room would have to sort of dumb down their edge to not offend that person, which is basically what the woke culture is all about. It's like, let's dumb down everything so that one person or one small group doesn't feel offended by it. And it's a problem. But
big problem.
that goes right into your question around martial arts is because, and I have I train in qigong and some tai chi chuan, and like I've but my background before was more yogic, and then I've always had a sort of martial understanding, and I still train in some of these kind of kung fu a little bit, but I don't have a deep, like 20-year background in martial arts. What I do have, and I think what martial arts is, what my understanding of one of the most important aspects of it is that it's about centering in the lower dantian and the belly and learning to move from that core, which is, for a man, this is your battery here. Of course, the heart and the head are important too, but your lower body. And so all martial arts is kind of coming back to, you realize this is the source of a strike. It's the source of a hug. It's the source of anything. And so that's empowering. It gives us a power. And what I think, there's so many reasons, and true martial arts, because a lot of martial arts is young little boys that have anger or, just have felt beat up as a child and want to protect themselves, but they're, you can tell the difference between someone that's just wanting to get out there and prove themselves versus, most people start there. And then, you keep growing and you realize that, it's actually about surrendering into, and the great martial artists don't need to prove themselves. They're going to just rest back and just let it happen, unless they need to step in a moment, but they're going to do everything they can not to. They don't need to prove themselves. So that quality of being able to step into peril and trust yourself in that place, and being able to train where there's physicality, but it's not just on your own. You're actually sparring with a real person, and there's this intimacy in that, and there's peril where you could get hurt. So that, and I think that helps men. If they really do that, it helps them become more trustable in a culture, because they're training in a place where they have those skills. But once you become sharp and you become lethal, if you really do that, you don't need to show that off. It's more like then you can really become sensitive in the heart. Then you can really become a lover at that point, because you're sharp already. But if you're trying to get people to become loving and like soft without having trained that, then it's false. They can only go so far, and there's going to be resentment underneath it. So it's like, it's screwed. It's a problem that we're going to be facing a lot more. And I don't think it's what the powers that be had in mind, or maybe the women and the men that are stepping into that. I don't know if that's what they had in mind. Maybe there's powers that be that are larger, that there is some idea to weaken or to domesticate the wildness or the power out of people. Because when a man's martial, he thinks for himself. His belly tells him what's true and what's not true. He's not going to just listen to the news and go, oh, okay. He's going to sit with it and go, fuck that, or good idea.
Yeah. This has been a topic where I've really been trying to respond in. It's a deep subject, and I do tend to believe that, like you said, maybe there are powers that be who don't like sovereign men, people who can be self-sufficient, who can think about themselves, who can have perhaps a different opinion, maybe what we're seeing right now with Joe Rogan seems to be maybe a good example of that. Joe, with him being a human being and having his biases and his imperfections, but yeah, even the woke mob is all over him. So that seems to be what's happening right now. Maybe it's just my perspective, but I have some very very strong thoughts around it. So yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah. Hmm.
I think it'll be fascinating to see how that unfolds, because he's such a big character and big player that it seems to be he's able to still hold his position.
I think so too. It's going to be an interesting dynamic to see how this unfolds. But yeah, I think we're in a much. I mean, this is a culmination of really what's been bubbling over the last maybe 24 months, and I think what's going to yet to unfold. But we'll see. Okay. Interesting dynamic. Can you talk a little bit about this kind of sexual polarity? It is something that really fascinated me, and ever since I read David Deida's book, it's been really something that it allowed me to understand really fundamental dynamics which were in front of my face, but they're almost invisible. It's like the elusive obvious. It's there, but you don't see it.
Can you be a little more, I understand what you're saying, but can you make it a little more specific?
Yeah. So this notion of having let's say to be really classical, having a masculine man and a feminine woman. And if the woman is sensing this masculine energy, she, it obviously takes some time for her to be able to trust and to really be able to ease into the relationship, as opposed to men having, trying to impress with certain techniques and, all this pickup stuff that, that in and of itself has some value, but it's really just a surface level stuff when there is a lot more deeper dynamic around that. So yeah, is this making much more sense? Or
yeah,
okay.
I want to expand it a little bit.
Please.
First, and maybe we'll come back in, is that I think there's lots of modes or ways of describing this, but I've always appreciated David Deida's way of speaking about the 3 stages, and we could apply that first to men's work, and then we can go into polarity. But and I think this is important for guys to feel, is that there's different stages we grow through, and one stage is like when it's for me. And so a lot of healthy men's work, it's a good place to start, is about men basically saying, I'm going to take charge of my life, and I want to win. And, like, it's kind of success, like, go, you can be the man you want to be. And those are, it's a kind of like a self-possessed endeavor, where it's like, I want to, because I need, and so it's healthy to a degree, but it gets a little bit old. So I would be cautious of, just look, if you're going to join the men's group or the kind of online program, if it's like win in the world, like that's half of life, winning. But also, as you get older, you want to start to notice what happens. Like when who do you become when you lose? Because you're going to lose eventually. She's going to tear you apart, and life's going to. So yes, train in those things. And then second stage is about more of like, let's create a community. And that's a lot of healthy men's group, where you're just sitting around and, like there's a lot of comfort, and you're creating safety with each other and camaraderie, and you're doing social projects. And then, but the third stage is much more of a wild beast of whatever opens the moment. You do whatever you can to step up to the precipice of this moment and enliven the room that you're in. So if you're sitting around in a men's group and everyone is shriveled up in gray and talking about their life problems, you go, hey, and everyone goes, what the hell was that for? And then there's like 100% more energy in the room in that moment, and so similarly, sexually, you have first stage where it's like dynamic polarity, where you can see that in a lot of worlds where it's just a man being, he's basically driven by his physiology, and the woman too. And it's all about power, and I've got the power, and let me show you through muscles, through big cars, big watches. And she's got the goods, she's got the boobs and the sexy body, the age, which was all saying basically, hey, I'm fertile. Like I'm a, very good opportunity to give birth. And so that's a play. That's a first stage play of rather look at me. It's about me. I want this. And second stage is where you're kind of dumb that down a little bit, and it's like we're equal, and you don't do that because you've grown out of it, and men become more feminine, women become more masculine. And the third stage is where, again, you kind of do whatever you can to create polarity in a dynamic. So this is coming back to your question. I think that the fascinating kind of polarity is when you've trained that martial skill to be aware of your circumstance, and you're walking home and you're aware of like, is someone going to rob me, depending on where you live, or you're aware of driving your car in a way that's going to get you home safe. So same awareness, you walk home and you walk into your house, and let's say your girlfriend's waiting there. Similarly, if you're trained to look at her and feel where she's at, and then if you choose, you may not choose, you may just be busy, you're going up into a client call or something. But if you want to create polarity, then you have to look at who's there, and is she super angular from her work day, or is she soft and like just like already feeling you walk in, she's going, oh, amazing, and then you play that dynamic where one of you becomes more sharp and present and penetrative, consciousness, basically a physical embodied consciousness that's willing to risk stepping in and grabbing her, that's willing to risk shouting, that's willing to risk being super soft and just saying, I love you, or my heart's broken right now, and just willing to risk whatever it is. And another partner that's willing to be more of a demonstration of radiance and expression, and the physical body then becomes light. And this could flip-flop. A man could be more expressive and more playful, and she could be like, we got to go right now, and that's a kind of a reverse polarity. But there are people that works for. But most people, their hearts are deeper down, where for most men that they actually, their core is that dantian of just, I'm here. And most women, they have that too, but their heart is more of like, I'm love. I want to be loved. I am, I love. And so that's the play of polarity, is that you become conscious enough to change, and it's a dance with your partner. So whatever, depending on what she does, you play, become sharper, softer, more humorous, and it's a beautiful play. But I also want to say within that, it's just polarity. Great.
Yeah.
It's it leads to great sex perhaps, but even that is, it's just sex, and it's beautiful, and it has the potential to be full of just life-changing energies. But let's put it in context too, that it's it's a function of the body, and polarity is a function in a relationship. It's just as important to being able to have a good conversation, or being able to be intimate, and we get to choose and prioritize what we want and long for in a relationship. But I think we have to be careful, because many people, when they come across books that are promising amazing sexual experiences and like juicy polarity, everybody wants that, and I wish it's definitely exciting, but you still have all the same problems you do, and maybe even more. Like, it doesn't make the problems go away. It's like you still have to come back to who am I, who do I become when I'm getting what I want, and who do I become when the polarity is not there and she's, angry that, you're not doing blank, blank, blank. And so those are just ways of expressing ourselves in the world that if someone's interested in training polarity, if someone's interested in martial arts, train in that. If someone wants to learn another language, do that. But those things aren't going to inherently solve our problems and make life all of a sudden where it's like, oh, finally now I get to kick back. It's like, maybe for a couple of minutes or a couple of months.
Okay. So it's just one dynamic. Like we need to keep, I guess, conscious or being cognizant of the fact that we're all connected. So there's all these things that are happening constantly.
Well, there's great people that have done art without any polarity, and there's great people that have done art where their lives are being torn apart by like a wife that was, or a man or a husband that was scandalous and crazy, and polarity creates wildness. And so that's beautiful to ride that wave. But, there's great people that like Eckhart Tolle or something, who it doesn't seem like he had a lot of polarity in his relationship, but the great, teacher and what he's put out into the world. Or there's all kinds of examples of both, let's just say.
Yeah, there's more than one way to skin a cat, for lack of a better term.
I like that one.
Gotcha. All right. I'm conscious of time, so I'm gonna wrap this up. Couple of things real quick for us as men right now, to kind of bring it back or rope it in back to men's work. What is it something that we can do right now to help future generations? Because a lot of things have been said about patriarchy that we've scarred, generations, both men and women. I'm hoping that there is going to come a time where men are being seen as these, really what we're talking about in this work, about a lot more conscious, or a lot more present, a lot more sharp, and go and take care of business if you need to. What are some things that we can do right now as men to help future generations?
The most important thing, in my opinion, to start out with is that men truly train to know themselves and can sit with their own being, and through that training of consciousness, meditation, yoga, men's group, whatever the thing is that allows a man to stand and maybe bow, or just stand and literally let his body becomes a destination. It becomes a destination for frantic energy as a landscape of integrity. So your body becomes a landscape of integrity, and then whatever you do comes from there. So then some people will go out and become politicians. I mean, maybe not that many, but hopefully those people that have trained in something, or they become fathers and they pass it on. And so, but it comes from us first dignifying our own body, bringing integrity, breath, openness, aliveness. So it has to start from this place. If my body's dead, or, dead, I wouldn't be here, but if it's numb, then I could have all these great ideas about men and men's work. And those are still healthy to a good degree. Like people could be listening to a podcast and they go, oh, that's a great idea. Like I'm going to take better care of myself and, create healthy boundaries. Like those are good things, but also the more that it becomes integrated, so it's a head, heart, body, spirit, that's what we call integrity, dignity, in my words. And we pass that down. And honestly, I've been thinking about this a lot. I believe that by doing that kind of a training and being able to bow with a way where you're online, you're in this moment, you're present, you're actively bringing whatever qualities you would want to see go forward into humanity. You're doing that. You're dignifying your own lineage behind and forward, whether you have children or not. You're becoming a thing that's then invaluable. So that's a lot of words for that, but
Yeah.
I think if I was just to say really simple, is learn how to represent the qualities you want to see men live into the future, become a living representative of those things. That's the number one thing we could do. If we're talking about it, but we're not really doing it, it's just words.
Wow, that was beautiful. Thank you very much for that. One last question to wrap things up. Was there something that you wanted me to ask you that I didn't?
No, not that comes to my awareness. I feel really just in the moment with you, and I've enjoyed speaking. I've enjoyed the conversation and your sincerity and your own practice. And I know that you've been on a journey with interviewing many different men, and so I'm curious to see how that arc of your own evolution and what that turns into, because actually I haven't watched that many, but I would be curious to see what you were like when you first started and what you'll be like when you finish.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's been a journey. I still looking back at some of these episodes, I'm like, damn, why did I interrupt that guest? Like, I should listen more. So it is this kind of a practice. Every single time that I show up, I should be thinking, okay, I'm here because of the other person, but I'm actually here to witness. And it is an ongoing, things that are unfolding constantly, new things that are coming up. So yeah, let's see what comes up in the next like 20, 30 episodes. Eli, thank you very much for your time and for your wisdom. For people that resonate with your message, where can they go and find a little bit more about you and the work that you do?
They can find me on Instagram or on my website, eliburen.com. You'll find stuff. I've been around for a while. I'm not that active on those mediums. I like to spend time in rooms with people, but I hope that if someone is compelled, that they want to come and train and come train in Zion, Utah with me, or I do an online dojo too, that we cover a lot of these themes that we're talking about.
Nice. All right, folks, thanks for tuning in and listening. Please go check out Eli's website, follow him. I think he has some great gifts for you guys. So thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.